We're recording and live.
All right, welcome everyone to the February 28th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm Ken Swanton, the Vice Chair, acting for Rob tonight, who is away. I guess the first thing we will do is take the roll and see who we have. Oh, I guess Stephen just came across. So I guess I'll just call the attendance. So Bud Shagnon, are you there?
I am here.
Patricia Pecknick?
Here.
Greg Bennick?
Yes.
Stephen Delisle?
Yes.
Lynn Scow?
Here.
Here, and I'm here, Ken Swanton. So we have 6, plus we have Gretchen Joy, our note taker, who is also here, and Caitlin, the city planner, and I believe even is Andy Port also with us, I guess.
I am.
Great. All right. The first topic is we have a request for withdrawal, I believe, for the Basin Apparel at 19 Water Street. So I don't believe there's anybody who's here to speak on that, is there?
I'm not seeing anyone at this time,
Well,
Chair.
If not, I think we should just gracefully have a motion to withdraw. Would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll make that motion. Motion to withdraw VAR 22-8 for 19 Water Street.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Delisle and seconded by Mr. Bennick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. I guess we'll just, since it's a Zoom meeting, we'll just go down the list here. So Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Mr. Bennick,
Yes.
Mr. Shagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick,
Yes.
Ms. Scow,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. So it is 6-0 to withdraw. I assume that motion was to withdraw, right?
To accept the withdrawal without prejudice.
Without prejudice, yes. All right.
Correct.
So that gets us to our first public hearing. We have the 68 Bromfield Street public hearing. And for that, I see the slides are already up, and I assume Attorney Mead is probably ready to take the floor. Are you there?
I am, Mr. Swanton, and Mr. Chair. I would have a question. So last time on this matter, Mr. Ciampetti, yourself, Ms. Scow, Ms. Pecknick, and Mr. Bennick sat on this matter. So Mr. Ciampetti is not here, and I was wondering if either Mr. Delisle or Mr. Chagnon watched the tape and qualified to sit on, one of them qualified to sit, so there would be 5 members.
Yes, I'm really glad you brought that up. I should have brought that up ahead of time. I believe both of them watched the tape and were qualified, but I believe our planning department suggested that since Mr. Delisle is the more senior member and first was asked by Rob to qualify, that he would be the voting member. So the voting members would therefore be the 4 of us who were here last time, plus Mr. Delisle.
Great, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that. So for the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport. With me this evening is Blake Wilcox, who is the manager of 68 Bromfield Street LLC, Matt Langus, who is the architect on the project, and my colleague Ben Taylor. Next slide, please. So at the last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about the addition and the amount of lot coverage and the reflection on open space, even though this was a pre-existing non-conforming lot, pre-existing non-conforming structure, and a pre-existing non-conforming use. There were some concerns by some of the members relative to the size of the addition. Other members were happy to have the 4 units and were supportive of the project. And so we met quite extensively over the last couple of weeks, and Blake really looked at what this project is and what the results would be depending on what the reduction could be in that addition, to have some kind of a meaningful reduction to address some of the members' concerns, but still have a project that works. As a result of that, even if there was a reduction of 12 inches off of that addition, it would have reduced the size of those units to something that would be not beneficial, or at least not practically workable from a marketing and sales point of view. And so in light of that, what Blake has done along with Matt is reduce the width of the proposed addition by 7 feet from the sideline. And now it pinches in 6 inches from the existing structure of both of its connections. The number of units is reduced from 4 to 3 units, which reduces the footprint by a total of 172.43 square feet. The side yard setback is improved, even though 10 feet is required. It's improved from 20.2 to 27.2. The lot coverage is reduced from 39.5 to 36.4, where 40 is allowed. And the open space increases from the existing, which is 26.2, over what we had proposed, which is 34.2, which is now at 44.2, where the max is, or the minimum open space is 40%. There's also a reduction from 8 to 6 parking spaces, given the reduction in the number of units. So with that, if you can go to the next slide, please. So you can see here where the addition has pulled back in the kind of the crux of the L, if you will, or that corner in the back. You can see it's pinched in a little bit, 6 inches on each side, so it doesn't extend beyond the existing structure. You can see the larger open space area on this elevation. And what has happened is the egress in the back has changed. There's kind of a walkout patio or stair landing area. Both of those are under 3 feet, so they don't count towards the sideline setback. Next slide, please. So with this, I'm going to turn over to Matt so he can go over some of the changes that occurred in the elevations.
Good evening, everyone. Matt Langis, Scott Brown Architect, 48 Market Street, Newburyport. This elevation you can't really see many updates. There were a few opportunities for us to shift some windows because we had eliminated second floor decks and second floor doors. So it allowed us a little bit more play to balance out some of the windows here. So a first floor window on the left side of the lower elevation here was adjusted to be a taller window, but other than that, I don't believe there are any updates. Next slide, please. So here's again another view that is probably the most or one of the views is probably the most affected. The addition is completely gone from this view, and again, it sort of allowed us a little bit more flexibility from a DCOD standpoint to balance out the windows and make them a bit more symmetrical where we could. Next slide, please. So part of this process was going back to the drawing board, with some of these updates. And I think what was driving that was in order to cut a significant portion off of the massing of the addition, keeping 4 units was just not possible. It was creating bedrooms that were either functionally too small or just not comfortable. That 7-8 feet is just not a comfortable bedroom. So going down to 3 units just allowed us much more flexibility to move some spaces around. So from this view, the left corner and the right corner are set in about 6 inches, 6 inches back, on the left side, and then 6 inches to the left on the right. So in doing that, we're able to cut just about 30% off of the addition. So that's 7 feet. What it allowed us to do was decrease the actual addition footprint from about 640 square feet down to 450 square foot, just in the footprint of how it is placed on the lot. So this is one of the more affected elevations where we remove some exterior decks, remove the doors, again, allowing us some flexibility in the DCOD and moving some windows around. Next slide, please. So again, here, this was previously a large door with a rooflet overhang, but because of the flexibility and the unit layout changes, it gave us sort of more of a better opportunity to have a fresh pass at this. And, this elevation, I think, blends a little nicer into the existing as opposed to the previous presentation. So as part of doing this and doing this change, we still kept all of the existing materials of the previous presentation. So 7/8 divided lights, simulated divided lights, black windows, still working with hardy plank trim, hardy plank clapboard and siding, and PVC water composite trim. So all of these materials that were from the previous presentation, they still apply and still carry into the updates that we have in front of you tonight. So I'd be happy to jump into those in a bit more detail if there's any questions, but if not, I would turn the presentation back over to Attorney Mead to close it out.
Thank you, Matt. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So I'll just go through the criteria, maybe not as great a detail as I did last time, given the reduction in the size, but so most important, of course, is this continues to be a multifamily structure, and therefore there can't be any new or intensification of existing nonconformities, and there are none. In fact, as I said earlier, we improved some of the existing conditions. The next is whether the proposed change will be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure or use. Here, the footprint has been reduced in the addition, and the addition is now tucked back into the back corner. Of course, the applicant can't change the existing non-conformings regarding lot area and front yard setbacks, and has improved the open space so that's compliant and meets the lot coverage requirements under the multifamily structure dimensional requirements, which apply to this lot. The intensity of the use is reduced by 1 unit. And as a result, the intensity of the parking is also reduced. And so where before the applicant was already cleaning up a lot of that hot top running around that building, it's now cleaned up even more. The building is receiving a major renovation and a much needed facelift, which will have a dramatic improvement on the neighborhood. Additionally, the addition, as I said, tucks in and is not really seen from either Prospect or Bromfield Street. Next slide, please. And again, we just want to kind of show you this again. This building is not unusual for multifamily buildings in this area. And it continues to be now even almost, more the same of the other multifamily buildings in the area. And so it's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood in that regard. In the next slide, please. And again, just to show you, obviously this face is going to change dramatically with the cleanup of the windows and the siding, and the trim work and doors and entries that are going to be proposed. Next slide, please. And same way on Bromfield Street. Again, you won't have that sea of asphalt running all the way around the building. There'll be much nicer landscaping towards the back. The parking will be towards the street. It will sit much more friendly, so to speak, on the lot and be softer as opposed to this hard pavement. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions of the board, but we believe the board can find that the proposed request for special permit and modifications to this pre-existing non-conforming use and structure are certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure and use.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. At this point, the next step in the hearing is to take any comments, either for or against, or any questions from any members of the public. Usually we'd start with the public that are in the room, but we are all Zoom tonight. So if anybody out there on the attendance list wishes to speak, hit the raise your hand button and you will be identified and given a chance. And I don't see any. So we'll move on from that portion of the hearing to questions from the board. And we have 6 board members that are all qualified and can ask questions. And would somebody like to begin? I don't, any of you in particular?
I have a question.
Sure, Lynn Scout.
Yeah, hi, how are you? I know that last time that we spoke that the neighbors seemed to be in favor of the proposed project. And so I don't know why they wouldn't be in favor as you've tailored it now, but I'm just curious if you've had a chance to talk to any of the neighboring properties owners about the revised project.
I think the answer is yes. Blake is on this call. Blake, if I'm incorrect, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that the weekend after the last meeting, after Blake and Matt had kind of worked on what they were going to do, Blake had an opportunity to talk to some of the neighbors. And the answer was, yeah, they were certainly pleased with the changes.
Yeah,
Blake?
so I'll jump in. Yeah, so yeah, that was the case. So I did reach out, especially to the direct abutter, which is 64 Bromfield, and walked Dave through my proposal. And I to be totally frank, I think he was very happy that we pushed it back 7 feet. And so I was very sensitive to that. And all of the other neighbors that I've spoken to, again, I did go door to door, knock and talk to everyone originally. Most people were like, it's going to be better. Just, yeah, it's great. We don't really care. But Dave, who is the most impacted, based on my conversations with him, I don't want to speak for him, but he was, in my opinion, very happy with my proposal to shrink down the addition 7 feet and reduce a unit.
Great, thank you.
Lynn, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to ask any questions?
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I love that this photo is right there because the fence that's going to be placed behind the 2 parking spaces here on the Bromfield side, rather than behind the 4 spaces, is so significant an improvement in how that the space is going to read from Bromfield. And so I'm just curious, and it's an idle curiosity, not a consequential curiosity, about fencing materials or style.
So I'll jump in on this one if I can. So we, as a standard, I am a big fan of cedar fences. If you look at any of our projects done in the South End, it's always cedar. So we use, we will be using cedar fences anywhere we install new fences or gates on this property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Pecknick?
Not at all.
How about the gentleman this evening? Do you guys have any questions?
I have no questions.
No questions.
What?
No questions.
I guess my only questions are, you had mentioned in the last meeting that you were a big fan of permeable surfaces and you're going to use permeable surfaces in your driveways and things. Are you still? I did not notice that in the plans, but many times people don't say it on the plans, but is that still your intent?
Absolutely. Again, yeah, that's something I actually do believe in, just my own personal standpoint, that it's better for the kind of local surrounding. We don't get the runoff. We don't get as much sort of puddling of water and freezing. So yeah, anywhere we do any hardscapes on any of our projects, we do use permeable surfaces. And that is the intent for this project as well. All hardscape surfaces, including parking areas, will be permeable.
Okay, thank you. And the last time you'd also talked about the plan for the sidewalks, the current sidewalks you'd be upgrading. The one on Bromfield Street, I think you mentioned brick, and we had a conversation about the one on Prospect Street. And I guess the city council insists on either brick or concrete, and you're going with concrete on Prospect. Is that still your plan?
So yeah, like yourself, I also walk, the South End quite a bit. And as you know, I put brick wherever I can because I enjoy it. I enjoy looking at it. So that is still the intent, to brick that section of street on Bromfield. And on the Prospect Street side, I will work with DPS. I would like to do hot top there, but if they're set on concrete, I'll do the concrete. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So whatever DPS wants, we will do. Yeah,
I think we heard in the last meeting, the requirement in the historic district is either brick or concrete, and to get a waiver from that for hot top, you have to get a waiver from the city council. Wasn't that correct, Andy, if you're still plugged in here, or maybe you're not?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Again, I'm happy to commit to the concrete. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so brick on Brownfield, concrete on Prospect. Those are my only questions. So if there are no other questions, then we move to the deliberations point, and even though only 5 are voting, all 6 can deliberate. So who would like to begin?
I would like to, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think this is a great example of how the developer can get a lot out of a property that he's putting a lot into. And the city can get what it needs in terms of a rehabilitation of this property that will really contribute to the streetscape, but without the amount of new massing that would really tip the tip the scales on a corner lot. I think that's what I was really concerned about a couple weeks ago. I appreciate Scott Brown's sensitivity to the district. And in addition to the decreased massing, among the improvements to the plan that I appreciate are, as Attorney Mead mentioned, the addition is stepped back, a 1/2 foot. I think removing the decks and staircases and adding the covered entryway and the landing is terrific. The use is being intensified, that's been mentioned. The fence makes a big difference on Bromfield. Again, only those 2 parking spaces. And well, somebody was talking, the architect was talking about the windows. That full window on the Prospect Street elevation is so much more coherent with just the overall fenestration. And the same with moving one of the windows from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor on the Bromfield Street side and installing the 2nd basement window. To me, that really de-emphasizes the massing. And the north elevation windows too, I think they create a better sense of scale. Same is true on the west. So in my view, this is now a successful plan for the city as well as for the applicant. And I appreciate the work that went into this redesign.
Thank you, Ms. Pecknick. Would somebody else like to deliberate?
Sure, I will. I'll go if no one else will. Yeah, I'd also like to say I appreciate the willingness of the petitioner to make the changes and respond to the concerns the board expressed in the last meeting. I know that we all had some concerns about the massing, given that while it is multifamily, it is in the middle of the R2 zone. So I think that with that said, I think it's a lovely project and I would be in favor of supporting it.
Thank you, Ms. Scow. Someone else?
Mr. Swanton, I would like to deliberate on this matter.
Yes.
Thank you. Coming in late to this process for this application and listening to the last meeting yesterday, I was very pleased when I opened the file to see the new plans and thought that it was an incredibly excellent improvement over the prior plans. And I think that, clearly this plan as configured now meets the 2-pronged criteria of 9 B2A or B2B, excuse me. And furthermore, I think that for Mr. Wilcox and Mr. Langus to come back with such a plan shows, a commitment to Newburyport and a civic mindedness that really helps to move these things along and make for a good hearing and a good outcome. So I can completely support this.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. How about Mr. Benick or Mr. Shagnon? Who would like to go next?
I can go, Mr. Shagnon. I have to agree with Mr. Delisle. I also, after listening to the previous meeting's tape and watching it, was happy to see the changes that were made. Once again, the applicant, heard the board, heard the concerns, I think, of the board members and at least one person that had called in that was had a problem with the massing. So I would also support this with the changes, and my hat's off to the applicant for making such changes. Thank you.
Thank you. And Greg, would you like to comment?
Sure. I obviously supported this project in its first iteration. I found that it met the high legal standard, or actually the low bar that has to be hurdled with respect to special permit for nonconformity. So I found the last project met those standards. This certainly does. I will say that our community, it's a shame that we've lost another rental unit here, and I find that somewhat distressing, but I support this.
Thank you. I too support this. You know, to just directly address that point, Greg, that you brought up. I mean, this used to be 4 rental units that were much more affordable than what we're gonna see, whether it's 3 or 4 units. So depending on what kind of housing you think we're really short of in this town, I mean, I don't know. It's to me, that's a different argument. But getting back to the new proposal, I kind of concur with a lot of what's already been said. I particularly like the fact that the addition is no longer so visible from Bromfield Street and has even been set back a little bit. And thank you for being sensitive to that. I think it dramatically improves the massing of the building in a very congested neighborhood that the city council moved a few years ago to downzone. So thank you very much for listening, and I can wholeheartedly support your revised proposal. And with that, I guess we are ready for a motion for a vote. Would somebody like to move this?
I'll make the motion. It's a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities for 68 Bromfield Street, ZNC 23-2, with the special condition that the applicant shall replace all city-owned sidewalks actually adjoining the project property according to the Department of Public Services specifications and install 1 street tree on the Prospect Street side of the project. Said improvements shall be completed prior to occupancy, or proposals shall be submitted to the zoning administrator indicating proposed completion schedule.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Now we move to a vote. I think I'll just go down the list here of little pictures on the screen. So, Mr. Bennett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Scow?
Yes.
Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick?
Yes.
And I vote yes, and that's 5. So it is approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Hey, thank you all very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. The next thing we have on our agenda is a proposal for 7 Norman Avenue. And do we have someone to present that?
Yes, Braden Monaco here representing MFG Ventures.
Good evening, Braden.
are you?
You have the floor.
Well, nothing better than having the floor. Here we go. So again, I'm Braden Monaco, MFG Ventures. My partner and I, Chris Ferron, he's here on the call as well, but I'll try to do most of the speaking for us this evening. Our goal tonight is to move forward with the project again at 7 Norman Ave. It's a property we purchased a few months back, a very distressed property there on Norman Ave. It was at the time of purchase, it was vacant, and there were actually some people living in it that were not supposed to be. But the goal tonight is we're looking for special permit. Obviously, currently there are 2 nonconformities. There's the lot size. The lot size sits just under the requirement there in R2, as well as the frontage. So the front yard is a little narrower than the requirements. And then obviously the home being in such disrepair will be torn down, and the goal would be to replace it with a new single family structure. So we can go to the next slide if you don't mind. This is just a quick picture of the proposed drawing or the proposed rendering for the new home that would sit there on the property. Next slide, please. So obviously, we're looking at, as it stands right now, the property does have quite a few nonconformities. It does sit too close to the side setback, as well as it is too close to the front setback, as well as the frontage and lot size. Our goal with the property will be to bring the property, the house within all requirements in regards to setbacks. So correct any of the nonconformities that exist on the property as it relates to where the home sits on the property. The only two that we unfortunately cannot correct would be the lot size and the frontage of the property. So the new construction will meet all current zoning setbacks, height requirements, will sit within the confines of the city requirements. Next slide, please. So just for reference sake, I'm sure you guys are all aware, but just for reference sake, obviously Norman Ave comes off of North Atkinson, off of Low Street. So we just wanted to give you kind of some context as to where that property sits currently. You can see a little further of an aerial and then a little zoomed in. So you can see the current home sitting really right there on that side. If you're looking at the house, the left side, it's really right on the property line. Our goal is to pull the home within again, those setbacks and be well inside or inside those 10-foot requirements. Next slide, please. With the home build, obviously, here's kind of the zoning metrics that you guys you require. You'll see that we fall within all of the requirements, other than that frontage being required 90 feet in R2. We are at 80. And then there's a 10,000 square foot lot size. We're just under that by about 50 square feet. So I think we've done a good job with the proposed plan to build the home within all the setbacks, even though the property itself is narrower and a little bit smaller than what's required in R2. So you'll notice that our height requirements are well under the maximum height requirements, lot coverage as well. Open space. So really we're right in the wheelhouse of what you guys are looking for in regards to the metrics and making sure our property conforms to the city requirements. Next slide. The existing home, I laugh because this picture, every time I look at it, makes the house seem a lot nicer than it really is. The current home that sits on the property was built in 1947. We did go through historic prior to this meeting and was passed through there. But this is what the house looks like currently. It's just over 1,000 square feet, really nothing that could be used for the modern family. Next slide. So again, here's our front proposed elevation. Just from a view perspective, really trying to meet the modern family needs of Newburyport, bringing in younger families, trying to give them what they need for their growing families. Next slide, please. I will just go through the side elevations. Here's that left side elevation, again, meeting all of the requirements from a height perspective as well as the setbacks. Next. And your right elevation, same thing. Next slide. And then your rear. So the rear just have a porch off the back, slider, and have plenty of backyard, obviously within the requirements and open space, etc. Next slide, please. Just showing here, it's kind of hard to see, but I'm sure you guys had a chance to take a look at it ahead of time. But the way the house is going to be proposed will sit again within all of the required setbacks and actually improve all of the nonconformities that we have control over, I guess is the best way to say it. So next slide, please. This is the neighboring house. I just wanted, from a massing perspective, just wanted you to understand that some of the other houses in the neighborhood have been modified over the years. This is the one directly to the right of us. We've had lengthy conversations with these homeowners, as well as multiple people have come to us. The few times we've been on the property, every time we've had at least one neighbor come by and thank us for doing whatever we're going to do to the property, because it's been really an eyesore to the community. Next slide, please. And these are two other properties that sit within the neighborhood. So the one on Low Street sits actually directly behind us, and then Murphy Ave is just down the street. A walking distance away there. So just to give you an idea of what's kind of been going on a little bit in that neighborhood, I'm sure you guys are well aware. but just from a context perspective, from a massing perspective, et cetera. Next slide, please. Already been working with the city in regards to the tree and sidewalk ordinances and updates, having lengthy conversations around what's going to be required. I do believe there's going to be some trees that need to be removed, sidewalks repaired, trees added. Not a problem for us at all. Obviously improving the visual effect and the functional effect of the neighborhood is of utmost importance for when you're building a home for families that are coming in to live in that home and enjoy the neighborhood for many years to come. And then again, we did go through the historical commission. I believe that was last week or the week before, in regards to getting a waiver for the demo delay, deeming that the home has no historical significance. So that's really all I have for you tonight. Again, the goal for us is to remove a really detrimental property to the neighborhood and put something in place that's going to be more beneficial for obviously everybody around it and bring a young family to the community.
Okay, thank you, Braden, for your presentation. At this point, we open it up to anybody in the audience. If there is anybody, they look like they're all with you, Braden. But if there's anybody else who would like to say anything, either in support or against, or ask a question, just raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Seeing none, we will go to the board. Questions from the board. And on this one, we have only one of our alternates will be voting, and the way it's been rotating, correct me if I'm wrong, Caitlin, but I believe it's Lynn's turn tonight, right, Caitlin?
That's correct.
Okay, so the voting members on this application will be Caitlin, will be Lynn, myself, Stephen Delisle, Bud Shagnon, and Greg Menick. So, but all of us can deliberate. So would anybody like to ask the first question of the applicant?
I'll take a crack at it. Mr. Monaco, could you just go through for us the material choices that you'll be using, windows, the siding, et cetera?
Yeah, so from a window perspective, there'll be vinyl windows, all obviously meeting all requirements and code requirements. Siding will be hardy siding, as well as composite PVC trim throughout the whole house. So no vinyl, no aluminum, nothing of that sort.
Okay, and for the that sort of board and batten part on the first floor, that'll be some sort of rot resistant material as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if, full disclosure, we have a buyer that's interested in the property already, that approached us, a young family from another part of the country actually, which was really exciting to bring them home to where they're from. They might get rid of it, but everything on the house will be rot resistant. So that would originally planned was also hardy board and batten, but whatever goes on the exterior will be all rot resistant and a composite material of some sort.
Understood. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Who would like to go next?
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so the existing square footage is 1,115. And what is the proposed finished square footage of the house?
Proposed finished square footage as it sits right now is just right about 3,004 square feet. That's what we have currently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pecknick. Would anybody else like?
My quick point there. I mean, the goal always when we're building these for young families is to try to get a 2.5, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, as that seems what we've found in the last couple of projects we've had is that most people are working from home, trying to have an office and a spare bedroom because 2 people are working from home and having kids and such. So we're trying to maximize as much as we can without, making it too detrimental from a size and scale perspective, for sure.
Are there any other questions from the board?
This is Mr. Shagnon. I had a quick question. I see on the print that's up right now, it looks like the top of the roof, the ridge is that 32 feet? Is that what I'm seeing?
I believe so. Let me zoom in here quick. I can't. I was running off of the 32 and and then the 27 is the average grade. around the
Okay,
top.
so 27 is that what the number we use for the mid roof line?
Correct.
Okay, so it's 27 and 32 peak. Okay, that's all I had for a question. Thank you, Mr. Swanton.
Thank you, Mr. Shagnon. How about Mr. Bennett? Do you have any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
And I've already forgotten. Ms. Scow, did we ask?
Yeah,
you
I
have-
have just one question. You mentioned that you talked to the neighbors and they're excited that something's going to be done with the existing property. Have they seen the plans for the new property?
One of the neighbors we showed them originally, and then we showed them the other two properties that we had done in the past as a point of reference to kind of give them what our style and all of that was. So they've seen a version of it, not the final, with a couple of the roof line change, not the roof line, but the small covering roofs that you see on the front there and such. But they've seen the size and the scale of it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Scow kind of got at my question, which was, you say you showed it to those neighbors. What was their response?
The initial response from everybody was thanking us truthfully for just doing something with the property because it's been abandoned and run down for years now. I guess it was stuck in some sort of a divorce situation where the property was just sitting there abandoned, broken windows, things of that nature. There was actually some squatters and stuff at some point. So they've all been open to it. They've been appreciative of us coming in and actually doing something with the property because it's obviously detrimental to their views and to their to their property values as well.
Mhm. I guess my other related question is I went down Norman Street recently and there's as I was driving by, I counted like 20 houses, of which two had 2 stories. The rest of them were all smaller single family houses. And so I was just wondering if any of the neighbors have comment upon, do they have a concern that this is kind of a big house going into their neighborhood of small homes? Have you heard any?
No one's vocalized it. Truthfully, one of the biggest issues with this neighborhood, and this is something that I think is going to come up quite a bit with the historical commission, is that a lot of these houses are now deemed in that 75-year look back period. And they're all actually, none of them have foundations. They're all sitting on steel steel girders with pilings or footings as supports. So there's not a lot you can do to go up on them. So a lot of them have gone out the backs and such. Quite a few have mentioned that they're interested in selling over a period of time. They're looking to move, or they're aging out. Understand that their properties are not, meet the needs of a modern family. So no one has vocalized a concern about it. I think more people have understood why they haven't gone up on them, because it's been a much larger undertaking than a lot of the homeowners can take on themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be critical because I mean,
No.
if you had another 50 square feet, you would, and another 10 feet of frontage, you wouldn't be here because this would be a conforming building.
Right.
So this is not the South End. This is this is a much more spread out neighborhood with bigger lots and more room to work. And so anyway, I'll get into my deliberations when we get there, but so I have no other questions. So did anybody else on the board have any questions before we move to deliberations? Okay, so who would like to kick off deliberations?
This is Mr. Shagnon. I can start. I think the application is wonderful. I mean, although we're losing a cute little home, I do understand it's in a state of disrepair. And I think what the applicant has chosen to replace it with is a good looking building. I'm not so worried about the fact that it's 2-story. I think it's hard actually nowadays to have a 1-story home on this such a small footprint. And I do appreciate that the applicant has shrunk the overall size of the building so that it's more in keeping with the setbacks for the side lot and front yard. So with that said, I like the application and I can support it.
Thank you, Mr. Shagnon. Who would like to go next?
I'll go, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll concur with Mr. Shagnon on this one. I think that, the application and the presentation were good. It looks like a nice design. And I do agree with Mr. Shagnon that, you're losing a smaller home, replacing it with something much larger. But this is a fairly good sized lot. We're not talking about a small lot. We're not getting into lot coverage problems. As the applicant noted, everything with respect to this proposal is conforming except the things that can't be controlled. And I do have some familiarity with this neighborhood. Having grown up in Newburyport, I had a friend who lived there when we were kids, and Mr. Monaco, his description of how those homes are built in that neighborhood is not far from my experience. It would be a tough thing to sort of have a traditional rehab with what is there. So I think that this meets the two-pronged standard here for a special permit for nonconformities, and I can support the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. I would concur with my colleagues. I think that it does meet the standard needed by us, that it doesn't create any new nonconformities, and it is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I do think I appreciate that you talked to the neighbors and that they don't seem to have an issue with going up. And like you said, maybe that's something that they would like to do under different circumstances. So, and I do appreciate that you change the setbacks to make it more in keeping with the requirements of the city. And I think that'll be better for the neighbors not to be so close. So I would support this plan.
Thank you, Ms. Scow. Mr. Bennett or Ms. Pectic?
Yes, I have something to say. To the applicant, the conversation that you had with the Historical Commission, I thought was very interesting as they looked at, the history and scale of the neighborhood. And I may have been as surprised as you were by the intensity of that conversation and how long it went on. I would have expected for it to be unanimous. I don't have a problem at all with what you propose here, but I do, just for the sake of process, want to say that in general, so you're arguing that the height of the new structure fits within the context of sort of same scale houses. And I looked at 9 Norman Street, and it's been altered up to 1924 square feet. But then, you did have to go to the other streets, Low and Murphy, to find things like that. Those are really the exceptions. 14 Norman is 1752, 12 is 1452, 8 is 1337. 6 has an addition in the back, but they're all sort of single story, 1.5 story things. Mr. Shagnon used the word cute. So do I. Number 11 is tiny. It's only 776 square feet. Number 5 is 768. So I agree with Mr. Swan. It's important to look at that whole context of modest 1-story or 1.5 story houses. And so going from that sort of average height of 11, 12, 13 feet over 27, I think is significant. And I'm not saying that because I object to the plan, because I don't. I'm just saying it on principle, because I think that we need to see the whole full context perspective and realize, this will be an improvement for the neighbors, but 3,000 feet is uncharacteristic of the street. On the other hand, these are post-war, a lot of prefab houses. And I think you're right that they're not long for this world, and that this is sort of what's going to be happening to the neighborhood in the future. So I don't not support it. I would support it, but I just want to get all that out.
Thank you for both sides of that. Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, well, I can support the project. I think it's a significant improvement over the small home there. I think that home is, everybody's alluded to is, I think it's probably outlived its usefulness. I don't think there would be much of a chance to see that home rehabbed and renovated in its present size and configuration. So this, I believe, is a market improvement. It is, of course, bigger than the other homes in the neighborhood. However, I think it's probably a harbinger of what's to come here. So, and it's well designed, and the fact that it is more consistent with our dimensional controls is a positive. So I can support this.
Yeah, and to finish up, I concur with my colleagues. I too can support this. I think a lot of people already said it. Thank Mr. Delisle for specifying the two prongs of the zoning ordinance that we have to follow. And I think it's also been said that you're cleaning up a lot of the setbacks in here. I was concerned about the size of the house, given the street, but given that a lot of these little houses probably aren't, they weren't constructed to be here forever. And to me, very significantly, these are pretty good sized lots. They're very close to being conforming. If it was just a teeny bit more, you wouldn't be here. This would be a conforming building. So I can support this application. So with that, we need a motion. Would somebody like to make a motion?
This is Mr. Shagnon. I can make a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities for 7 Norman Avenue, ZNC 23-3, with the special condition that the applicant shall replace all city-owned sidewalks actually adjoining the project property in accordance with the Department of Public Services specifications and install 1 street tree in coordination with the Department of Public Services. Said improvements shall be completed prior to occupancy, or a proposal shall be submitted to the zoning administrator indicating proposed completion schedule.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Bennett has seconded the motion. So now we will vote. So I'll just go down the list in the other direction. Mr. Bennett, would you like to vote?
Yes.
Mr. Shagnon,
Yes.
Ms. Scow,
Yes.
Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So that's 5 in the affirmative. The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Brayton.
Thank you all very much for your time this evening. We appreciate your feedback and your approval.
You're welcome, and good luck with your project.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes, and would somebody like to make any comments or suggestions or modifications or a motion to approve? Perhaps somebody would like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a
will move-
motion, okay.
I will move to approve the minutes for our meeting of February 14th, 2023.
And a second from someone?
I'll second.
Oh, you have that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Bennett and seconded by Ms. Scow. Well, we'll just, Ms. Scow, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Mr. Shagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Pecknick,
Yes,
and myself, yes. 6-0, it is unanimous. Now we are to the point of the agenda where it says other updates from the chair or the planning director. We'll start with the planning director.
Nothing in particular, but if there are members have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the planning director?
I had one question. It's probably just semantics. I noticed that the abutters list for 68 Bromfield was much smaller than for Norman. And the south end, and when I look at that building, has way more homes around it. And when I read the definition of an abutter in our ordinances, it's kind of left up to the eye of the reader. is that something that's looked at more sternly than, I mean, it just, the town I came from, our abutters list was anything that touched the applicant's home within 200 feet. Now I was in a much bigger town with, half-acre minimums. But it just seemed like such a small list for 68 Bromfield. There were only 7, I think.
Yeah,
And that's the south end, and it is quite dense, as you know.
yeah. No, it's a good thing to look at. I hadn't myself taken a look at this one. We certainly can check just in general. We defer to the assessor's office that prepares the abutters list. But we can certainly go back and check and see whether or not the methodology makes sense in terms of the radius they use and the property owners that they pulled in. Let you know if there's anything unusual that we found there. But generally speaking, we have found them to be reliable, for doing that. But it's a good question you raise, and noting the number of lots, like you said, we can take a look at Caitlin and I can take a look at that and see if there's any question or hesitation on our part there.
If you read the definition of an abutter in our ordinance is strange in that it says any property that touches it, including any properties separated by a street. So when you take a corner lot, I mean, the entire, like the total other side of Bromfield, one could argue, is an abutter. And there was only one home on the other side. It seems like anyone that could even see the house would be called an abutter.
Well, I don't know if I go that far, but definitely, I think to your first point, that's definitely something we should take a look at just to be sure. I don't know, just off the top of my head, seeing something that may seem like an inconsistency across the street where one looks like it's could be treated that way and the other one for some reason is not. That doesn't make sense to me, I guess. And I'd want to take a look at both the map and the listing that they had, particularly the map, obviously. But I think you raise a valid point, which is that we should be encompassing. And I typically in the past, when I've talked with the assessors here and in other communities, we've tried to be a little bit, sort of out of abundance of caution, including a lot or two more if there's any doubt about the exact, delineation of, say, the 300-foot radius or whatnot, so that we don't run into, a situation of that inadequate notice. But again, we certainly, it sounds like in this case, you just double check that one in particular. But if you see other ones like this, obviously we'd want to know as well, and we can follow up the assessors on that as well. I don't know in this instance that would necessarily call for revisiting, the whole process and whatnot, but it definitely is something we'd want to address, to your exact point.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we revisit it for that project. It's just if I were to do the old radius rule, any building within, say, 50 feet, we left off 3 homes. 50 feet. I mean, most lots are bigger than 50 feet wide. Bromfield's 50 feet across. So, anything diagonal to that.
We'll definitely
lot.
check this one. Yeah. It's a very valid point, I think, you raised. We'll definitely double check it. And Caitlin and I can circle back to let you know what we found there.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
So Andy, I think it's a very interesting test case that's brought up here. Could you please copy the entire board when you send back what you find?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think maybe it should go without saying, but I think should we find something that we feel like is for any reason systemic as far as the methodology that they use when they're developing the abutters list or doing the map, we can obviously summarize that for you as well, and we'd want to confirm that detail. These things come up very rarely where there's a question there about the abutters list per se. Sometimes more often what I have heard over time has been someone says, well, I'm not on the abutters list, I didn't get notice, and we go back to the abutters list and they are in fact on it. And presumably then, going back to records did get noticed. But here, where there's a question about the radius or how many properties we're including, we certainly do not want to have inadequate notice. And as was pointed out by, member, the National Register Historic District is a pretty dense area. So there's a fair number of abutters that could be pulled into play. So we certainly don't want to see the assessor's office giving under notice to it on the list that they give us. But again, given that we get the list from them, we can double check it, circle back and let you know what we find both for this one, but also if there's anything else that we think should be adjusted in the protocol they're using.
And just to follow up on that, I assume when we look at the files that are on the website for the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, and there's an abutters list there, I'm assuming that's the certified abutters list. So if there are 7, the assessor's office has said that's the 7.
Right, you're referring to the uploaded assessor's abutters list, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is a neighbor of 68 Bromfield asked me why they weren't on the abutters list, and they are literally 55 feet away. And I said, I have no idea. That is strange to me, but I'll ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely just from your description, I want to take a look at the list and the map and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed there. And obviously, more importantly, maybe if it's a systemic or a thing, or if there's anything that was a miss, or a gap that was for some reason, a one-off. But it's a valid point, and we'll double check that here and let you know what we find.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Andy or Caitlin? I just want to bring up one quick thing, which is I think among the board members tonight, I think only Stephen and I were on the board when we used to meet in the council chambers before the pandemic. And in those days, we would not go around the table in the same order for every topic. And I tried it tonight just to see how it would work, just to kind of on our two hearings, just to, rather than always ask the same person to speak first, second, third, to see who would like to speak first. And I'm just curious for any feedback, either now or you could let me know, or Rob will probably be chairing the next meeting anyway, but I think it's, I don't know, I've often wondered, would we be better to go back to the way it used to be when we would just be a little more, let people who really want to say something first, give them a chance. I don't know. And any thoughts? Or was this a pain?
I prefer it this way because sometimes I would like to listen first and other times I want to run out of the gate more quickly. And I think it can, when we sit in order and go in order, it can seem a little stilted. So I preferred the way it was handled this evening.
Okay, well, I'm just curious because I just tried something a little different. We only had two hearings. All right, I don't have anything else. So with that, I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Bye.
So
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good
Good night,
folks.
everyone. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Ken.